The other things that are coming out next month is the sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest, which is Ori and the
Will of the Wisps. Yeah.
Which Rob and I started playing Blind Forest for the channel, but
That
we have
game's
not,
really long.
How
we have
far
not
did you
finished.
You finished it. I didn't finish it. Outside of the
Yeah,
channel,
I finished it on my own, but Rob and I started a new playthrough, and I think we've got about like a quarter of the way through, maybe.
Yeah, the game's huge. And there's a lot of backtracking.
Yeah, a lot of it is like rinse and repeat death because you have to learn like the patterns of like jumping and dashing and all this stuff to get around in the world.
A lot of that game is built on the premise of you need to do the death-defying jump to make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to go into the trap to figure out where the trap is.
It's similar.
Not
It's
my
also
favorite.
like similar to a Metroidvania. There's a lot of backtracking. Like you
And
get
you
a
get
certain
power-ups,
power.
yeah.
You go back to the place where you couldn't get to before.
That doesn't bother me so much, but just having to waste time dying and
Right. I mean, it's very it gives you. It's kind of like an idea of like a quick save where you can save wherever you want.
Yeah.
So if you know like you got to a new area, you've never been there before, you can like you enter that area and then just save. And then like if you get to an area where like, oh, this looks really weird and dangerous, just save right before you start jumping into it. But at the same time, it breaks the pacing, and that's supposed to be a really quick run, jump, spin kind of game.
You also get very used to Ori's death
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
rattle. It's like every time he hits a thorn, and he just disappears. And then you
Did you guys play Hollow Knight?
I
Yes.
always rave about Hollow Knight.
Hollow
I
Knight.
would love to play it for the channel, but I have to like play through it again to get good at it. That's another one. Like Maryann brought up before. We want to really. What was the game?
blasphemous.
Blasphemous. Oh my god, I love Blasphemous. But again, like
I do too, and I really want to be good at it.
I played through that game forwards and backwards. Like you play to get two different endings. So I beat it once with like the generic you didn't collect all the things ending, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna start a new file and follow a walkthrough to find all the things that I missed. Because there's like, I think I got probably like a 90% on my first run. So I only missed a few things, but the problem is it doesn't mark on the map where the things that you missed are, so you have to go through the entire map and search around the room and
look for hidden floors.
and look for hidden exactly.
Yeah.
So the second playthrough, I just was like, fuck it, I'm gonna use a walkthrough because I don't have the time to dedicate to searching every room with all the power-ups and going back and forth. Because there are things you miss at the very beginning of the game in the very first map. You can't get them until you get the very last power-up, basically, or the very fast so you have to go through like the entire game and then back.
Alien Isolation is a bit like that with I played it a few times, and I also had to use a walkthrough because it's really cool how they paid homage to the original movie, but they actually included recordings of the actual actors from the first Alien movie, and they scattered them around on the Sevastopol station where you're playing as Amanda Ripley, Ellen Ripley, who's Sigourney Weaver's character in the first movie, her daughter. So,
That was a great.
but
That's fantastic graphics. That's a great shot.
you get like an ion torch early on in the game, and then you upgrade it to like a plasma torch and beyond, and you end up having to backtrack to get to certain doors that you passed along the way that required that upgraded torch.
Yeah.
So you can access those recordings, and that's the only way to get like 100% of everything.
But I mean, going into the game, you don't know what's in there until you actually go in there, though. It's not
Right.
like it marks it on a map or tells you like.
No, you just have to remember, oh, there was this door that I passed and it was over here, which, to their credit, I mean, they do a really good job of like making a lot of areas unique, but that game is set on a space station where everything looks very like samey.
It's easy to get lost because you don't know where you've been because you've been there already.
Exactly. And if you're playing the first time through, you're not as used to the area, so like you forget, all right, was it attached to this room here? Was it attached to that room? And you end up going around in circles a lot. And especially since you have an alien chasing you for the most part, you're not like that concerned with like, oh, let me explore everything. It's like, oh, let me stay out of line of sight so I don't die.
That's one of those games where they did it right. I think we talked about that in Dead Space 3 where it was like text logs and voice chat logs in a game that's super action oriented is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But like Alien Isolation, that's a perfect idea because you're hiding most of the time.
Yeah.
It's action, but it's subtle.
Yeah.
It's,
and you're learning
you're
about the
anticipating
world.
action.
Yeah.
But like they did that in in Doom, the one that came out in like what 2001, 2002 or something like that, Doom 3.
Yeah.
And it was just like you had to find text logs for everything. And I was like, no, I
Yeah.
want to run and gun
Weird.
and shoot demons.
And
That was
clearly
ano-
the character was only interested in doing that too, so...
Right.
That was another game where they really wanted, I think, to like make the game something special, but I think they lost track of the player experience along the way.
Yep, I think you're right. I'm
Kill
like,
these
it's a,
happy
it's a
faces.
good idea, and it definitely builds that world. It's good, but it kind of
just-
like throws the pacing off.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I loved Doom 2016, because it was like all pacing. It just kept you moving throughout, and like the bits of story that it told you in a way that didn't wasn't as disruptive.
Like
to
the
your
story
gameplay
happened to
experience.
you.
Yeah.
You didn't have to like read it in a book or listen to it in a voicemail.
Which is a good segue into the other thing I was going to say about next month is Doom Eternal, a sequel to Doom 2016 is coming out.
Oh,
I'm really
right.
excited about that.
I thought you said, like, Doom Eternal?
Yeah.
Doom
Not-
Eternal.
No. Change the space. No, AJ. I'm too gullible. And you get me all the fucking time. We've been married how many years, AJ?
That's the sign of a trusting marriage.
All right, there might be a new
Sign of a fool.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, I see the
Yeah.
colors you're talking about. Yeah, there are colors. That's cool. Good eye.
Gonna sit on you.
AJ, Maryann, welcome back to the couch. It's been a long time.
Hey, yeah.
Too long.
And Jeff was here earlier, but he was
He died.
You got the plague.
he died. Yeah, very sad. We're gonna resurrect him eventually.
Yep.
We'll get to
We
it.
have a ritual in mind. I'm going to sacrifice a virgin.
I was
Yeah.
thinking a chicken.
I mean,
Should
the
it be a
chicken can
virgin
be a
chicken?
virgin, yeah.
By the way, this
If it's ethically sourced.
this music that's playing right now, this is sort of the dungeon music, and it is fantastic. I really love it.
I'll boost it up. Let's
been
have a
in
moment
my-
of silence so we can hear it. That's pretty catchy.
Not a moment of silence for Jeff. Just like appreciate this dungeon music.
It feels like a cross between Mega Man and like Kirby's Dreamland music.
Yeah, a little bit. You're right.
Just played so many hours, and this was the first game of this style that I played. I guess apart from Zillion, because Zillion also had a lot of
You mean
exploration. You
on
can go where
Sega,
you
right?
want.
You're talking about the original Wonderboy?
What year did it come out?
Monster Boy, sorry.
Wait, Zillion? I was talking about Zillion. Zillion came out on the Master System. That came out in like the first year of the console's release.
Yeah.
This game, Wonderboy 3: Dragon's Trap, came out later, near the end of the console's lifespan, before the Genesis. So I think in like 1989 or so. But just really masterfully done.
But this series originated on the Master System too,
Yes,
didn't
it did.
That's what I was referring
And this
to.
series has a really complicated history. So this eventually became Adventure Island. So the first game, Wonderboy, became Adventure Island. Like, it was the exact same game, just sort of like a palette swap with Master Higgins. And then that series kind of went
Excuse
off on its. That was the name of the character.
Master Higgins was the skateboarding
Yeah.
islander.
Yeah. He was also actually a real person in Japan who could press buttons extremely fast, and they even made like a turbo controller about him. He would do TV appearances, playing games. He worked for
I feel like I'm gullible now. This
a
doesn't
company
sound real.
whose name I cannot remember. Oh, Hudson. He worked for Hudson, of course.
Oh, Hudson Soft.
Okay.
Yeah, Hudson Soft. So that was the guy. Meh.
Didn't they make a game called B-52? Because
That was a band.
So there is. So right here, if I jump in that spot, I will fall. But if I get over here, we'll secret.
AJ, before you leave this room, can you become a Dragon Ball? Dragon Ball.
So you see how this room has purple blocks?
It has
So
purple blocks.
Earlier, when I went over the top of the pyramid,
They're
there
more
was like a little
violent.
room at the bottom, and the blocks were a different color, and that's because they're breakable. So like, there's a whole secret where you have to re-enter that room like 12 times, and there's like a bunch of hidden chests.
who
Huh?
does that?
I don't know, but I tell you, for me, growing up playing this game over and over and over again, discovering those secrets, like there was no internet. Literally, there was no internet.
yeah.
So discovering stuff like that was amazing.
You're old.
I'm
You predate the internet.
I'm an old man.
I forget. I was listening to a podcast. It was probably Rooster Teeth or one of the other ones that comes out of that house. But they were explaining, like, I had to explain to my kid that I existed before the internet existed. I was like, that's going to be something that I'm going to have a conversation with. Like, I existed before internet, existed before smartphones, existed before, broadband. I guess that's the internet too. But, like, existed before, having books that weren't made on paper, that existed only digitally, or audiobooks, really.
Yeah. It's funny to think that, like, it's weird that there's a whole generation now that doesn't know any time before the internet. Like, for us, that's just...
So is that supposed to be a pig? Or is that supposed to be a dragon?
It's a dragon.
Because that's bullshit if that's a dragon.
It's a dragon, but it's a mummy dragon.
It's a mummy pig dragon with flesh. I call bullshit. AJ's gonna make pork chop sandwiches.
Mm-hmm. See, there's his sarcophagus. Which, to be fair, does look rather piggish because of the nose being more of a snout. The health bar is very handy. That did not exist in the original game, actually.
So did anyone here... I got a question that will determine your nerd validity. Did anyone here ever own a Virtual Boy?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so Rob is the master nerd.
My
I
friend...
played one.
Okay.
I played one at the Toys R Us, but I never owned one.
I remember playing Red Alarm. I think Red Alarm or Red Alert. I think it's Red Alarm on the Virtual Boy in Toys R Us.
Yeah.
My friend in high school
have
had
this
one, and I played it. And then I had another friend in college who let me borrow it for a while. So now I am a mouse person.
Why
So
would
I can
the mummy
walk
turn you into
on-
a mouse?
Blocks.
You're questioning video game logic, Maryann.
I want to know.
If Mouse really loves you, it's in his kiss, Maryann.
So you can walk on ceilings and up walls. It's really neat. Get into small areas, but
But you lost your
because you're a
fire
mouse
breathing
person, different weapons you can't use or will be more or less effective. So,
mouse size.
Yeah.
How where little thing, big thing, no work.
so I think he gets an armor called Prince Armor,
You
which
should be able to go under that arrow.
yeah, I had to jump it and I didn't. So, but when I entered the pyramid, there was a little area I couldn't get to on the right, and now I can just walk over there. Yeah.
Why
This'll
did you
warp
bring
me
up the
back.
Virtual Boy? Now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
I was just thinking because AJ was talking about the Master System, and I never owned a Master System or Genesis for that matter. Actually, I never owned any Sega system, but
Very sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, we were a Nintendo household.
Me
My
too.
brother was the gamer, but I heard about Panzer Dragoon and I begged my parents for a Sega system so that I could play that game. They said no.
I had to rely on my friends mostly
Dancing.
for video game access because my parents were very much against getting me a console. The only reason I got one actually was because my grandparents on my father's side bought one for me for one Christmas, like in the 90s, I think. And then that became the trend. And I think my mom was okay with it because I think she was the main like person with a gripe against getting a console. But I think she was okay with it just because the games for Nintendo were not particularly violent or gory or anything like that. They were mostly
Or
like
visually that way
kid-friendly,
anyway.
yeah.
Yeah. It was like a suggestion
Exactly.
of violence.
so, that kind of made things easier.
What games existed at that time that were especially violent?
Well, all of them, really.
All-
I mean, there was like
I mean-
all the games had like guns. There was street fighting.
Yeah, a lot
I
of the
mean,
arcade games did. Yep.
It was all like I got in
Wow.
trouble. I think I told you the story last time. I got in trouble. I lent a friend from like grade school Street Fighter, and like I couldn't play with him anymore because his mom got mad.
Yeah.
But it's that's the Mortal Kombat craze that happened at that time,
Oh God, of
where like
course.
people beating each other up and there was blood.
right.
Like meanwhile, like Lethal Weapon was the most popular movie and kids had no problem watching it and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like AJ grew up on Rambo and Monster Boy, no problem.
Yep.
It depends what parents you had more than anything else. I was really fortunate that my cousin and I were able to get our the blessing of our parents. Like they just got us Nintendos and it was no question.
Yeah, my grandparents actually got us the Master System. It was a
Nice.
surprise one Christmas, 1985, I think it was. Or
Nice.
85 or 86 that we got it.
So we
We used to play with my parents.
Will and I grew up with the Nintendos in our houses, and like I worked a lot. Like I broke a lot of labor laws as a kid because I just worked for my dad, and I
You got to buy your own.
I got to buy my own games, and like I didn't get an allowance. I got paid basically because I went to work with my dad, and like I wasn't paid a lot or anything because I was just a kid going to work with his dad. I was able to save up, and like he bought me a Super Nintendo one year for Christmas, but I bought like my own games, and I eventually got like a Master System secondhand well after Super Nintendo came out. I think that's why I didn't really like know the Sonic games or all the games AJ loves. I'm like, I have no idea what those are.